want to take an opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Ray. As you can see from the photo below, this is a picture of my son Luke, about roughly a week old. He was a 3-week NICU grad, and I had the absolute honor of being his mom for almost 14 years before he passed away due to a very rare chromosome condition called mosaic trisomy 22. I also work in the field of child health related research as a knowledge broker. And what that essentially means is I go and speak to families a lot of the time talking about various types of research or about the research process. And I help to bring relationships together so they can help evolve into partnerships and potentially work together in research. And that can come from a variety of different formats, but that's another story on it. So today, I want to talk to you about the research process. Now, that might sound very simplistic in nature, but it's kind of a bit complicated. It really depends on what type of research you're working on, but I hope to kind of simplify at least a few of the concepts for you here today so you can feel like you are ready to tackle whatever project that you are currently intending to partner on. So what does the research process look like? Well, it really depends. That can be anything from clinical science to qualitative research to quantitative research, things like that. And so with that in mind, let's dig in a bit as to what the process looks like for at least a few different types of examples here as we walk through the entire cycle that is the research process. So one example would definitely be potentially changing how a certain practice or certain activity happens in the context of healthcare. Or that could be in hospitals, that could be in community care with your pediatrician, things like that. It could be even in spaces where you might receive rehabilitative services like occupational therapy or physiotherapy, things like that. But anyways, there are certain processes or practices that people have in these spaces that help them to better understand how to convey certain aspects of your care or your child's care. And so sometimes there is new knowledge that needs to be developed or a new idea comes about. And that usually takes a bit of time to establish. In some cases, it might be talking to other people and seeing whether or not this is a knowledge gap that needs to be addressed. And whether or not that is the case, if you tend to find a growing understanding or consensus as to the fact that this does indeed seem like it is a research gap, then that tends to move forward to the idea of writing a grant and perhaps forming a team as well too to see who might also be interested in addressing that question. That will move to, if you get the grant funding, you can get data collection, and that will move all the way to developing new knowledge. And that can also move towards changing the practice afterwards and reevaluating whether or not this was impactful and kind of moving in that direction in terms of seeing where you can implement that in different spaces that you might receive that particular type of care. Now, this is an example that can cover a variety of different types of research that often comes with a lot of thinking and planning. It might be a mandate from certain types of policymakers. It might be a need that comes from physicians and clinicians saying that we need a new type of treatment for a specific issue or anything like that. And that will likely take some time as well too, because there's a need to create funding for that. There's a need to take time to discover what a certain issue might be. We might not have all of the answers until that is established, whether it's in the clinic or whether that's talking with other policymakers at large, given the fact that you would be accessing large populations of people. And so you move through those processes to get towards sharing that impact with other people and saying that this is important to be seen in that specific space, depending on what that type of research is. So when it comes to the pace of research, I think it's really important to think a bit about the idea that this is like music, but not like a consistent plan where it's always the same path that music takes. We know that every bit of music doesn't sound exactly the same. I mean, we might have a few arguments as to certain types of music sounding similar, but at the same point, it still has unique factors to consider. And in some cases, that music might sound a little bit chaotic in your mind. But to know that there is a bit of a common path, sometimes it can be helpful to talk to the team that you are working with in order to help you better understand what part of the song you're in terms of what research phases look like, and why they take so long is another thing. I remember the first time I got exposed to the idea of peer review, which is where a bunch of people who work in a particular field review the science data that you collected to see whether or not it is considered to be valid. And so sometimes that can take a very, very long time. And it kind of felt like, well, I just want it to be done. I'm excited to see that. Well, of course, everybody else is as well, too. But that is the type of rigorous process that some of these steps can really necessitate at times. And so if you ever need clarity, just ask. There's really no ridiculous questions in this space. And if you know somebody within the team who's willing to answer that, take the time, because it's worth you better understanding that as well too. And there's benefits in sharing that with other parents who might not be familiar with research, where they can be more informed and come from a more informed space when it comes to understanding the larger complexities of the world and caring for our kids as well too. So as you navigate the space of really figuring out where you are in the process and also where you fit in that process, it can feel a little bit confusing at times. And as I mentioned previously, this is the time to really be more honest and think with the people on your team, but also where it might be where you see a more efficient path. And sometimes there may be little gaps along the way where you notice something that nobody else notices. And sometimes it can feel like you don't have the power to say anything in certain spaces. I really would argue against that. I think that the reason why you're there is because you catch the little things because of your lived experience. And if there's an opportunity for you to share something new that might not be expected, that might be a little something different, definitely consider speaking up and sharing that insight, because that's not always something that is provided room for. And sometimes that can be just a delightful surprise to everybody, that you come up with that one idea that can just change the course of certain aspects of research. So when it comes to those research cycles, it's not like this is a static thing that has to always be driven by certain factors in mind. You are there to help understand the larger picture, and just your thoughts and your experiences might help share new ideas that help certain phases of that research cycle flourish. So if you don't understand the task of the day, definitely speak to the team member, any team member, and help them understand that you need to catch up as to having a better idea as to why you are at a budget meeting or why certain other aspects need to happen on that day. You might find yourself with a little bit of energy and you're just really excited about seeing the progress happen when it comes to certain factors associated with research. While that is an amazing energy to have, sometimes it might need to be diverted elsewhere, because there are certain things that are just unfortunately out of the control of everyone else when it comes to the speed of certain things happening. So we just want to make sure that you understand as well too, that you can't change certain factors, that there will always just be certain barriers that just need to happen, and you just need to learn what it means to be patient in that space. I get that way too. I get very excited about the idea of the concept of creating meaningful change, and it just needs to be put into other activities sometimes at that time when it comes to finding some distractions until the time comes where you can witness that amazing change, or to see that publication finally come out on the internet, things like that. And there's also the potential to contribute across the cycle, I think, is one last really important point along the way. So it's not like you have only one singular role along the way and that's it. You can imagine different ways that you can participate, and you can challenge researchers as well too to consider how you can fit within certain things, because they might not know the deeper nuances of your life other than the fact that you are a parent to your awesome child. And so when you can share certain aspects, whether you are an accountant and you're really good with numbers and you'd like to learn what it means to do coding in research, or a variety of different things that you bring to the table that are unique to you, they might actually help within any of the phases of that research cycle as well too. And also, when it comes to that end phase and you see that publication out, take an opportunity to breathe. Not just for all the stresses and the nervousness and all of the uniquely new ideas that come up out of these spaces, also for the fact that you did something really, really cool. And I think that we don't do nearly enough to celebrate new big steps in our lives as parents. And this is an opportunity for you to share something that you did that is so out of your comfort zone. And definitely take the time to celebrate.